everybody. Welcome to Decide to Dominate. We're super excited today to be a little bit closer to you on the screen, live and direct, and we've got a very special guest, Mr. Scott Bradley. Scott is the head coach of baseball at Princeton, had an amazing career in Major League Baseball. DJ's repping the Princeton shirt today, obviously, which you also wore on the Eric Burns interview.
Actually, I did.
Which was our first one ever.
Specific reason why.
We're going to talk about that in the show today. So anyways, I'm going to kick it over to DJ, and then we'll get going. Thanks for joining the show.
No, my pleasure.
Great to see you. I mean, you look great. You look like you could play.
I don't know about that. We're trying though. We're trying to get up and work out a little bit every day.
So talk about that. I mean, at your point, I mean, at your age, I mean, you're looking pretty good. So what are you doing to keep in shape here?
Probably a little too much. I have some interesting hours. I'm one of those guys. I'm trying to outdo Mark Wahlberg a little bit. And everybody knows about his routine about getting up early and stuff like that. I'm usually out of bed between 1:15, 1:30 every morning. Start working out in my apartment. Do a lot of body weight stuff. Some kettlebells, some bands, and everything else. I work out at Lifetime Athletic here in Princeton. Just a great, a great fitness center, a great gym. They open up at 4 a.m. So I'll work out in the apartment for a couple hours. And then head on over to Lifetime, part of the early crowd there that shows up at 4 every morning. And then I usually finish up about 9 o'clock each day before I head into the office. So a little excessive, but you know what? I plan my day. I think I think better when I move. So I like movement and activity, and I kind of plan my day and figure out what I need to do and who I need to take care of.
Well, you're doing a terrific job. So last week, Mike and I had a chance to get to the winter meetings in Nashville and ran into a couple of our folks that we both know, one in which is Clint Hurdle. So Clint, as you know, as soon as I mentioned your name, he said, "Hey, Scotty's one of my guys." But one of the things I loved about Clint is his aggressiveness. I know everyone has a different style in coaching, but from the first time I met Clint as a manager, especially for a guy like myself that loved to run on guys like you that played catcher, he allowed us to. He said, "Look, if you get a jump on the pitcher, take it. Go for it." And so there was never a sign. I'm curious, you being a catcher. When there was a pitcher that was throwing slow to home, they had because we time guys, how long it would take them to go into their windup and then throw. How frustrating, and how did you handle dealing with those pitchers that, when you knew it was going to be tough to throw out a guy at second?
DJ, the first thing is we all loved being around Clint. And, I had an opportunity. I played against Clint as well. So we got to know each other as opponents, watching them play. And then, when we were together in Tidewater that year, when Clint was the manager, I was a little bit older. I was sort of on my way, sort of back down the ladder, which isn't the way you normally try to do it. And being able to be around Clint, was great. He treated us like professionals, but yet there was discipline and intelligence there, very, very consistent. But going back to the catching thing is, we were never enamored with statistics. So it was all about, you didn't really concern yourself with, wow, I can't throw a guy out when he's here. It was all about thinking how you were going to get the hitter out. So even if the guy stole second base, that he wasn't going to score. There were a lot of pitchers that tried to then compensate and were so worried about allowing guys to steal that they would slide step, they would do different things, and then they would make mistakes and they'd give up a 2-run home run or they'd give up a double up the gap, which, didn't really. So, there were certain pitchers. I caught Randy Johnson quite a bit when I was with the Mariners. Randy was notoriously slow to home plate. And you just knew that there were certain teams when we would play Oakland, when Oakland had, Ricky Henderson and Carney Lansford and some really good base runners. You knew every time Randy pitched that if there were guys on base, they were just going to take off. But you just didn't. I wasn't going to call all fastballs. I wasn't going to call all slide step to get Randy out of his rhythm at that point. It was all about ultimately winning the game. And even if a guy stole second base, you were going to make sure that he wasn't going to score. So you didn't really concern yourself with whether a guy stole or not. It was about the overall picture of making sure that you gave yourself the best chance to win a game.
Understood.
Man, so wow, so much to unpack there. So I obviously, as you know, at Sports Innovation X, we're where sports and technology and innovation, and you mentioned kind of data analytics and all that. Talk about, obviously we're all kind of old school, right? And, like you said, you didn't have Amazon, all this data analytics and percentages and launch angle and speed and all that. Back in the day, it was just like, get the guy out, throw the guy out, get on base, get in. How, talk about what you guys are doing at Princeton in particular with all this data and performance metrics. And, are you guys using a lot of that? Or are you more just kind of like, guys, let's just focus on the, the basics? I mean, just is there a happy medium there? What are you doing at Princeton, and what are you seeing with other colleges?
Yeah, no, we put a lot of resources into all the new technology, and you really have to these days. But I think most of us that consider ourselves old school, we look at the data, we take the data in, we look at all the analytics, but we're also not afraid to put a eye test on what we're seeing. And that is always, and in fact, most of the time, the data, the analytics basically just tells us what our eyes are seeing. This new generation actually needs a little bit more, they need proof. Sometimes, I'll tell a guy, we'll have hitters and a new pitcher will come into the game. And our pitchers will run over to the scouting reports that they've created. There's a program out there now called Synergy, where almost every single major Division I college has Synergy. We have access to every video, every bit of data on every other Division I team. My players, if we're going to play, we play UNC this year. We're going to go play North Carolina. My players can go into the locker room for weeks before, and they can pull up all the pictures that we're going to see and see video. They can filter it by what count. So if I'm a left-handed hitter and they have a certain guy on the mound, I can say, all right, I want to see all 0-2 breaking balls, or I want to see all 0-2 pitches. And there are times where my hitters go run. The guy comes in to warm up, and my hitters go run to the scouting book. And I'm like, fellas, the most important thing right now is to watch this guy warm up. The data may not tell you what he's throwing today. Right. You need to watch. We have TrackMan. We have big investment into TrackMan, which is a great teaching tool. It gives you so much data, especially from the pitching side, from spin rate to spin efficiency, not just velocity, but perceived velocity, which is, the velocity of the ball as it gets closer to home plate, which of course is less when it gets to the plate than when it leaves the hand. It shows vertical movement, horizontal movement. For the hitters, it shows exit velocity. It shows, angle of off the bat, the contact angle. There's so much technology we all use. And again, you'd be crazy not to use the technology that is available right now, but you also have to be, you can't be so reliant on that data when it comes to making in-game decisions. And I think that's the difference now. And you're starting to see, even at the major league level, you look at Bruce Bochy and you look at some of the older men, the Dusty Bakers, they use it. They look at the analytics. They look at all the information. They prepare reports, but yet they're not afraid to trust what their eyes are telling them on that given day.
Yeah, I remember when we paid you a visit last season before the season got going and talking about some of those things that you guys are using. I mean, to have the ability to go in. We talked, I think it was with Bernsey, about Tony Gwynn and looking at, between his at-bats and stuff. But to be able to go in and look like an 0-2 count from a certain pitcher, I mean, that's just like, you just don't get that.
Yeah, I mean, you can just filter it. And I know some of the different things you guys are involved in. My oldest son, Kevin, took a job and is working with one of his best friends, Tyler Krieger, down in Atlanta at a place called the Maven Baseball Lab. And it's probably the most sophisticated and hottest baseball training facility in the United States right now. They use all the force plates. They measure everything. And you have baseball people that are then doing the teaching. You have the Matt Olsons of the world, the Spencer Striders. You have big league guys that are showing up because they want to hit and throw and work out with all the data that Maven is using to show the hitters. Matt Olson likes to go in a few times a week during the season just to check his numbers to see exactly where his stride foot is, where his weight distribution is. And as you guys know, because you've been involved in some of the different companies that use all the force plates and stuff, that technology is unbelievable when it comes time to, to teaching and to assess where you are and what you might be doing wrong at that given time.
Yeah. So with all this technology, especially at the collegiate level, Scott, and I assume that, when you're doing clinics or camps and you've got a high school coach or you're dealing with high school players, how are you translating that information, or are you translating that information in terms of technology and how they need to get ready for that at the next level? How do you manage that?
We really don't have the time, DJ, when we run a camp. If we have a 1 or 2 day camp, we may use the data and stuff for our, from a recruiting standpoint or whatever. But it's tough when you have somebody for a day to basically, and we'll show the guys some of the basic information, or we may email them at the end of the camp. We may email them what the TrackMan data was or whatever else. But if that player ends up coming to Princeton, it's great for us to have that, because then we can start our teaching, right? And start to make suggestions. One of the big things with TrackMan is, grips and secondary pitches. I can basically say to this young man, hey, I think you're better off throwing a slider than you are a curveball, because it'll match better with your two-seam fastball, or it comes out of the same slot, and we can use the TrackMan data to show exactly where the release of it is, the spin of the breaking ball, from a deception standpoint, how late, that break is. So it's amazing what you can do. We also there's a new batting machine out there called the iPitch. So we got the iPitch last year. And, when you hit off of pitching machines, normally, you can have it throw fastballs and breaking balls, but you actually have to physically change the machine. Yep. And if you're going to hit breaking balls, you're going to hit all breaking balls. Well, the iPitch comes with a tablet, and you literally can sit there and program it. So it can throw one pitch, a 94-mile-an-hour fastball, down and away. And then in 7 seconds, you can have it throw a 83-mile-an-hour slider in the other direction. So when you have simulated games and you're hitting off this machine, you can see velocity, right? You can crank it up so it's 94, 95. You can see 84-mile-an-hour sliders. And you can have it go from one pitch to another. There are times where we'll actually let our pitchers take the control of the machine and have them actually pitch and make decisions to try to get somebody out. Cool. The other cool thing, we have an analytics team here at Princeton. So we've created an analytics team among the general student population. We have about 15 Princeton students on this analytics team. Adam Maloof, who's one of the really, really interesting professors that we have here, just has a love for all this. He oversees the program. Joe Hamacher, my pitching coach, worked with Tom House for 6 years before we hired him. So he's got a really interesting analytical background and everything. Well, with this iPitch, our analytics team went to the physics department and they put the iPitch on a hydraulic lift. So we can go back now. If we're going to face a pitcher whose release point is 7 feet 2 inches, we can now immediately take with the lift, raise the pitching machine so its release point is 7 feet 2 inches. Yep. And then if we're going to face, say, a right-handed pitcher from North Carolina, we can track down all of his data on what pitches he throws, and we can now program the eye pitch to throw exactly the way he's going to throw. Same movement on his fastball, same movement on his breaking ball. So our guys can literally go out and hit off this pitcher for a week before we go down to UNC to face him.
My goodness.
Man, I love that integration, like taking the data to validate kind of what you already know, but then, yeah, that's an awesome use case.
It's really cool. This analytics team we receive phone calls from agencies. We receive phone calls from MLB teams that all want us to send them our students for either internships or jobs once they graduate from Princeton. It's been a great collaboration between the student body at Princeton, people that are interested in the science and the analytics of sport, and then we've actually been able to help them find some job opportunities as well.
Yeah, I mean, what an awesome opportunity for the students too.
It's been awesome.
Yeah, I had another question for you. You made me think about so another big difference, and we were talking about this a little bit in the green room, is name, image, and likeness to transfer portal. I mean, when we were athletes, you just had to think about being an athlete, going to school. Nowadays, I feel like even before you get to college, you got to think about like business opportunities, especially if you're going to a big D1 school like a Princeton. I mean, what has that done from like a coaching perspective in your mind for, these kids taking on even more of a burden, if you will, to think about like a business, a business on top of everything they've already got going on?
Well, you know what? It's one of the reasons that I love being at Princeton is because we're really, we're out of that world a little bit. The Power 5 schools is where that's all happening. The transfers, the collectives, the money opportunities, the amount of money some of these players are making. Everybody's a free agent. The tampering, I'll go ahead and say it. There's a lot of tampering that goes on. Yeah. A lot of friends of mine that coach mid-major schools. I don't worry. The kids that we recruit that come to Princeton are here to get a Princeton education. So I'm not worried about them transferring while they're here. They're not going to give up a Princeton degree to go somewhere else for $100,000. A Princeton degree is worth a lot more than that. But I have friends of mine that coach mid-majors around the country, and they're really in a dilemma. They bring in good recruits. They're almost worried about, if they get too good and they play a lot as a freshman and do really well. They're concerned about having them play summer ball in the premier summer leagues because they know a lot of the Power 5 schools are out there, recruiting the kids out of summer ball. And now these kids that they recruited and developed and got to come into school are gone. And you can't blame the kids. I mean, if they have an opportunity to go to a Power 5 school and make money, while they're there and play in a Power 5 baseball conference, of course they're going to do it. You can't blame them. It's just the system that we have right now. I think Deion Sanders, in one of his interviews, a few weeks ago, he basically came out and said that he feels sorry for the high school players right now. And he said, if I can recruit 30 players a year, why am I going to recruit all high school players? If I can go out and recruit somebody who's already played 2 years of college football, why would I not go out and recruit them? He said, so the high school players are now sort of caught in a time where they're just not as in demand. And again, these mid-major programs now these coaches feel like they're almost feeder programs for the Power 5s.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the spectrum where you got the juniors and seniors that would normally be going on to like the NFL or MLB or whatever, it's like, well, if I can stay here and get a bunch of money through a collective, why wouldn't I stay in longer? So there's like a crunch on both ends of the spectrum as far as like freshmen and seniors go. That's interesting.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I won't say which team either way, but I know there was the big thing now with the Major League Baseball draft is signability. So the teams will normally contact the player beforehand and say, okay, the third round is coming up. We plan on taking you with our third round pick. Here is the slot money. Will you take this money or not? And there was a situation, in the last draft where a young man said that he would sign for, I think, slot money, say if it was $250,000 for that slot, would you sign for? And he said yes. So the team came around, offered him that money. Well, the school that he had committed to turned around and offered him $275 to not sign with the pro team. So now you have these pro teams that actually, instead of just competing against a scholarship or whatever, are competing against cash for the guys that they're drafting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, business lesson 101 for that kid would be like, it's only $25K more, bro. You're gonna make way more down the road if you've committed. Go, right? Like,
Exactly, and the fact that if he if he has a good year and is drafted the next year, he'll get that same signing bonus the next year.
Right. Exactly.
So he can get 2 bonuses instead of 1.
So speaking of big money, what do you think of Shohei?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, we're getting close to $1 billion here. We were talking earlier, like who's going to be the first $1 billion athlete? We're pretty close with Shohei.
You know what? I think all of us are just, in amazed that I think everybody figured it was going to be in the 500, but to jump to the 700 and then to see the details start coming out. He's a really bright guy, and he has he's been getting some great advice. I know from some friends of mine with some different organizations that have gotten to know him, they say he is all about winning and he's all about baseball. And it's coming out now that he's making $700 million. He's going to get paid $20 million over the next 10 years from a salary standpoint. Mm-hmm. He wants the Dodgers to be able to sign other players. He wants to win. California state income tax might have a little something to do with all the deferral.
Very businessman.
Have something to do with all the money that he deferred. So basically, it's an unbelievable deal for the Dodgers, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers aren't done this year in terms of signing free agents.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. Yeah, being in Nashville last week was just the buzz of that place. Obviously, that was our first winter meeting. We ran into Frank Thomas. We ran into Dave Stewart, Clint, obviously. We talked about them coming on the show. I mean, that just being in the middle of all that, knowing the Shohei news. I think the Soto news broke the day we left or whatever, but just, I mean, it's crazy some of these contracts right now.
Yeah, it really is. And, they can justify it all. I mean, they start looking at, for the Dodgers. And again, even if the money wasn't deferred from a revenue standpoint, from being able to really jump into the Japanese market and licensing and shirts and everything else, right? The people that and the ownership groups that are paying these salaries are pretty bright guys. They're just not doing it to win. There's a business purpose behind why they are ready to pay some of these high-end guys, these really marketable guys, the type of money that they are.
Right.
Well, I remember, Scott, back in the late 80s when Kirby Puckett was, I think, one of the first guys to get that $3 million a year contract. And I remember thinking, oh, my gosh, $3 million a year. I mean, what's next, right? And, here we are 30-some years later.
Yeah.
And dealing with this contract of $700 million. It's amazing.
Wow.
It's truly amazing.
It really is. And you look at, in so many of the other sports and with all the Saudi money, with Live Golf, with what's going on in the soccer world, with what Saudi paid Cristiano Ronaldo and some of, Liverpool players and what they were offering Liverpool for Mohamed Salah. It was really interesting. Again, the money is there, and the sports industry as a business, it's not going to take a backseat to anybody. And like I said, these people, these investors that are supplying all this money are pretty bright people.
Right.
They didn't have access to the type of money that they have without having some smarts and without giving thought to this. So they'll find ways to make it back and more. That's for certain.
So you managed to slip in soccer, football, depending on which continent you're on there a little bit. We know your brother, obviously, and his football track record. Do you have a love for soccer too? And did you grow up liking soccer? Or you and your brother, obviously, can you talk about that a little bit?
You know what? Yeah. You know what? My dad was a Marine in Korea, sort of part of the greatest generation. So my mom and dad, we had 3 boys in the family. We revolved around athletics. My dad was part of the American football, baseball, basketball, 3-sport. Chip Hilton right? Going back to the great Claire B series of books, the Chip Hilton series. We happened to go to a high school that had a legendary soccer coach named Ralph Dugan. And so when my older brother, Bob, we didn't have a soccer background growing up. When Bob got into high school, Coach Dugan just happened to grab Bob, get him into the soccer world. He fell in love with it. Played basketball and baseball as well, but really developed a passion for soccer. I actually played football, regular American football.
Okay.
So I was on that end of things. And then I've just really watching my brother coach the U.S. national team, watching my nephew Michael play on the international scene, play in World Cups. I know, DJ, we've talked about this before, Michael, that, to have my brother coaching his son in the South African World Cup. Yeah, I've really grown to love European football. Yep. I'm a huge Liverpool fan. Okay. My weekends, my weekends revolve around watching, the Liverpool games. Yep. I dream to go to Anfield at some point. My youngest son, Scotty, is a huge Liverpool fan as well. We're talking about trying to get over to Anfield at some point. That would be a bucket list item for us. I just think it's a great game. I love the popularity of it, and the fact that, Bob and Michael, my nephew, have been involved on the world stage has just made it that much more interesting for us.
Yeah, no, most of my friends are shocked when I tell them that I would rather watch soccer.
Really? I think I'm shocked about that too.
Right, than a football game. I get bored watching the NFL sometimes. But so Scott, you with the amount of time you spent in baseball, and I'm going to change the subject a little bit.
All right, yeah, go for it. That's what we do.
So actually, I'm gonna ask Mike a question. See if I can ask this properly.
Come on, don't put me on the spot.
Yeah, I'm gonna put him on the spot. So I love soccer, but also love individuals like yourself that play multiple sports. Now, one of the most famous multiple sport athletes is Bo Jackson, and there's a game where Bo Jackson makes a throw from right field. That's unbelievable.
Left field.
Oh, was it left field? Okay.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to ask Mike.
Thank you, Scott.
I'm going to ask Mike, who was the guy that hit the ball and that allowed Bo to make that throw from left field? Do you remember the throw?
I remember the throw, but I don't remember who hit it. I don't remember who hit it.
Scott, can you tell him who hit that ball, please?
Yes, and you're looking at him.
I was gonna guess you just because we're interviewing you, obviously.
So it was interesting, and as DJ said, and DJ and I were teammates for a while in the minor league, and the respect that you have for all athletes. But when you get people that have the ability like DJ, maybe not quite at the level of a Bo Jackson, but to be a first round pick in the NFL, to get to the major leagues as a baseball player, Deion Sanders, but Bo Jackson was unlike any other athlete that I have ever been around in my life. I love telling stories about people that I played against and everything else. And Bo was just at a different level. You looked at the way he looked in a baseball uniform. I told Jay Buhner, who had a great, unbelievable arm from right field, I said, look, when Bo's on second, I said, and you make a throw to home plate, I'm going to be 2 feet in front of home plate, and I'm going to make the greatest swipe tag in the history of baseball because I'm not going anywhere near home plate. But in this instance, it's known as the throw, and I didn't do a whole lot in my baseball career. You're sort of known for certain things, but every year, it's kind of cool that it starts making its way on Twitter, well, X now, and the video out. And Harold Reynolds, who's on the MLB Network, who's one of my great friends, he was thrown out on the play. So it was bottom of the ninth. It was a tie game. There was one out, and Harold was on first base. It was a 2-2 count. Harold was running on the pitch, and Harold can really run. He led the American League in stolen bases. 99 times out of 100, Harold scores from second base on a double, no matter where it's hit. So I smoked one in the left field corner. I'm thinking, all right, the game's over. We have turf at the Kingdome. It landed on the warning track. It bounced up. It hit we had a little plexiglass sort of extension on the top of the fence. I saw Bo go running over. I run to first. I'm kind of watching this as a now at first and running to second. Harold's flying. And I see Harold, just as he's getting close to third base, Bo picks the ball up at the fence and with no step or anything else, just turns and heaves the ball towards home plate. And I watch him throw it, and I'm like, yeah, no chance. And I'm watching Harold run, and I'm watching the ball, and it looks like Harold's going in slow motion. So Harold's going, and the ball's going. Bob Boone loves to tell the story too, who was catching for the Royals at the time. When he saw the ball go in the corner, he started walking to the dugout because he thought the game was over. When Bo picked up the ball off the fence and threw it, Bob Boone said, I better go back towards home plate. And he goes back to home plate. Here comes the throw. Here comes Harold. And it literally is a foot above home. The ball may have hit home plate if Bob Boone didn't catch it, and tags Harold Reynolds out at home plate for what would have been the game-winning run. I thought everybody was getting ready to come over and jump on me for a walk-off win. It's just a legendary throw. It's part of the Bo Jackson folklore of the things that he does. And again, the fact that it's just the throw, and I'm part of the Bo Jackson history, is something I'm very proud of. That's for sure.
I love it. I don't know how we did not talk about that when we were in your office last time up there at Princeton. What we did talk about, and I want you to mention, is the Randy Johnson no-no. Can you just talk about that whole experience and just what that was like?
Yeah, when Randy was traded over to us, you knew how talented he was. But the consistency wasn't there. He was still trying to figure out how to get that 6'10" body all working together at the same time. So there were days where he was wild and different things, but he never gave up a whole lot of hits. And what was neat when you caught him is every once in a while, you catch somebody and that the hitter that's up there has no chance to get a hit. Well, when Randy was pitching, there were certain hitters that came up. You knew they had no chance to put a ball in play. We were playing a veteran Tiger team. Chet Lemon, Alan Trammell, Mike Keith, a lot of older established players. And, you could just see as the game went on, third inning, fourth inning. All right. There was some traffic. Randy walked a few guys in that game, but, no hits. And about the fifth inning, you could kind of sense. In my mind, I was just trying to make sure, because they were such a veteran team, that I stayed out of patterns with what I was calling. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't calling the same pitch in the same count. And it was an interesting game because Randy would have a tendency to overthrow his fastball, but he would never overthrow his breaking ball. So there were times where he would go, 2 straight balls to the hitter, and we knew that we could get him back into his routine, into his rhythm by throwing a breaking ball. So his breaking ball became his command pitch that game. So we threw a lot of breaking balls and fastball counts. Mike Keith came up. The only really good play, and again, everybody looks at Edgar Martinez as a DH, but before Edgar's legs started, he was a very good third baseman. And he made a terrific play on a ground ball to his left, to take a base hit away. That was the only ball that was really close. And then Mike Keith came up in the last inning and, got ahead of him. We knew we would throw a high fastball, and it may have been the highest fastball I think anybody's ever swung at. I think Mike actually tried to jump to hit it. There's pictures of me catching it, and I'm literally standing straight up with my arm extended. We didn't. The radar guns were different, but mid 90s, he had no chance to hit it. And I just remember at that point, in my mind, growing up a Yankee fan, all I could think about were all the highlights of, Yogi Berra going out to jump in Don Larson's arms after Don Larson threw the perfect game in the World Series. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm running out to the mound, okay, Randy's too tall. I can't jump that high. But there was a neat poster that they had in Seattle. And, not that I'm a huge literature guy, but all I could think about was the Adventures of Gulliver's Travels. And we were all out there around the mound like the Lilliputians, hanging on Randy's waist, and he had his arms just thrust up in the air. We were all, my head was probably at his chest, sort of all hanging on him as we were celebrating this no-hitter and the first no-hitter in Mariner history as well too. So a great thrill.
Man, that's awesome. What a story. What a story.
So obviously, Randy, one of the great pitchers. I'm curious, Scott, like who are some of who's your favorite, if you have one, or your favorite 2 or 3 pitchers that you caught in the big leagues? And for example, I love to watch David Cohn throw, because man, it looked like he had 3 or 4 pitches he could put anywhere he wanted.
Yeah,
right?
Maddox, like just ridiculous command.
Absolutely, and of course Frank Viola and his wicked changeup. I faced that in bat practice one time, and he actually told me he was throwing a changeup, and I still couldn't hit it.
It's funny, as we age ourselves with the names that we keep throwing around, which isn't necessarily good. But it's funny that
we threw Shohei out there. Come on now.
It's funny now when when some of the names you throw out, and the way your mind starts working, and just about every name you said right there, I have a connection to. I played on Team USA with Frank Viola. Played against him. He was at St. John's when I was at UNC.
Wow.
And then again, we played on a USA team together. And like you said, he could tell you that he was going to throw you 10 changeups in a row, and you'd still be out in front of the 10th one. That's how good it was. I played winter ball with David Cohn, so I had a chance to catch David Cohn in an entire season of winter ball in Arecibo in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
And like you said, he could throw that frisbee breaking ball that he could, as a right-handed hitter, DJ, he could start at 3 feet behind you and still keep it in the strike zone. And the next one, he would start it out over the plate, and you'd swing at it, and it would end up 4 feet outside. So great ones. But, for me, as a young player in the Yankee organization, I can remember even in bullpens and batting practice, having the opportunity to catch a Ron Guidry, having the opportunity to catch a Goose Gossage. How much that meant, to be able to do that. When I got traded over to the White Sox to catch a Tom Seaver, right? I grew up in the New York area, and Tom terrific, and all the different things. And what was interesting about Tom was he was so fine with his command. A lot of times catchers or pitchers want you to move away and give me the glove target. He basically said, I want you to sit dead middle of the plate. I want a low target, and your knees and your shoulders will emphasize the strike zone for me. I'm going to throw at your knees and shoulders, and that's my target. I will always then throw a ball onto a corner.
Wow.
When I got to the Mariners, catching a Mark Langston, who was leading the American League in strikeouts at the time. Billy Swift had one of the best sinkers. Billy had some amazing years. He won 20 games when he was traded over to the Giants and was second behind Maddox in the Cy Young. Billy threw a game for us when I was with the Mariners against the Yankees with Winfield and Don Baylor and all those guys. It was about an hour and 48 minutes. I think there were 22 ground ball outs. That's the type of sinker that Billy had on the old concrete style AstroTurf. It wasn't like this new field turf. I think Harold Reynolds, I'd have to go back and look. Harold had 8 or 10 assists, something like that in the game.
Wow.
And then catching Randy was thrilled, because you're talking about, along with Sandy Koufax, maybe the 2 greatest left-handed pitchers of all time. So to basically be able to catch Randy as much as I did, to feel like I had something to do with his development as a pitcher, because, again, I caught him when he was young. He wasn't the finished product. I felt like, okay, after I was done and finished up and was traded away and the rest of that, I felt like, okay, I did my part. Now it's time for somebody else to take him to the next level. So it was fun to watch Randy's career progress after my days were done.
No, that's great. And so we talked about pitchers. Let's talk a little bit about catchers for just a second. So I had a chance to play with a great catcher and play against Piazza. Todd Hundley was the catcher I played with, and what was amazing to me in both cases was to play with these guys or against in the minor leagues and see how they developed as major league hitters and catchers. Talk a little bit about those guys and anyone else really that you saw, just almost metamorphose, just change overnight or, over a 2-year period. I mean, because for me, it was astonishing to watch both those guys, because Todd was always a great defensive player, but his hitting was, challenging. When I saw him in the big leagues, I think one year he led catchers in home runs with 30 or 30 plus, something like that.
He did. And I think when you look at the evolution of the position, the number of games that guys caught back in our day was just incredible. Catching 150 games a year, they weren't getting day games after night games off. They were banged up. People weren't looking at the analytics and saying, oh, if you caught 3 days in a row, we're going to give you a day off today or whatever. These guys were catching. They were catching every day, and they were getting beat up. People don't realize that from the catching position, how much the wear and tear takes away from your offense. You catch certain pitchers and you're up there half the time and you're improvising your grip because your hand is all beat up. You have to show the pitchers that you respect what they're doing on the mound. You may want to, in between innings, sit down and get a drink of water and cool off and watch the opposing pitcher. But no, you got to go sit down with your pitcher and you got to talk about strategy and you got to talk about game calling. So difficult, and so much respect for the big league catchers who are catching every day, who are also going back and producing, offensively. Right. For me, again, growing up, I sort of had my eyes, of course, Johnny Bench was the guy, right? You sort of watched and saw what Johnny Bench was doing, how good he was defensively, how good he was behind the plate, how well he threw, the command, the pitch calling, and then being able to go produce, offensively. Growing up in New Jersey and everywhere else, watching what Thurman Munson was doing, right? And Thurman did it in a unique way, just grit and guile and toughness, but what he did, he was the captain of the Yankees, on winning teams. Right. And then, when I got to the big leagues, watching, the guys that were there at the time, the Carlton Fisks, and being able to, I was with the White Sox for a while, and to watch his work ethic. And the thing that you were around, when you were around Carlton Fisk, you realized is, I was a smaller catcher. A lot of the catchers that played all the time were big, but a little bit. Carlton Fisk was a mountain. He was a big, strong guy who was going back and catching 140 and 150 games, every year and producing offensively. And then playing with him, you'd watch after the game and he would walk down to the weight room and how he took care of his body, how he would remain strong, the work that he put in after the game to make sure that he could play again, the next day. So much respect. I was more of a utility player. I could catch, but I stayed around the big leagues because I was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. But I played enough different positions and could move around where I was a valuable 23rd, 24th, 25th guy on a roster. Absolutely. But these guys that were the main catchers for their teams, so much respect for what they did and what they had to do physically and mentally to prepare for every day was just incredible.
Man, I know you probably got like 1,000 more questions you want to ask, but we're kind of getting our time here. I have one more for you, and I know we kind of need to wrap up. So, the name of the show is Decide to Dominate. Obviously, it's based off DJ's book. I think if anybody's decided to dominate and embodies it, it's you. You get up at 1:30 in the morning, you work out for like 7.5 hours. I feel like I get up early and I work out. Clearly, I got nothing on you, so I got to step my game up. But, when you're working with these young athletes, when you're running these camps and you're working with the youth, you've got a lot of business people coming to see you. You've got students on campus, just kind of advice to those out there for how to get better at their craft, no matter whether it's baseball and or business, just kind of last words of wisdom, I guess, that you can impart on kind of everybody that's going to watch this down the road. I know I would love to hear that answer. You know what?
My brother is my mentor. My brother Bob is smart as can be. So much athletic intelligence, and I'm going to use something he always, listening to him speak to his team and the players and everything else, is you have to have a passion for what you're doing, and don't be afraid to empty the tank. So many athletes just go about and maybe they get they let the tank get to halfway before they need to rest. They don't want to. Sometimes you get some of the athletes, it's almost like they don't want to show that they care because they don't want to be disappointed if the results don't go their way. And my brother Bob always said, don't be afraid to care. Don't be afraid to empty the tank. Don't be afraid to give everything that you have in every avenue of your life as a team, individually, do everything possible. And then at the end, when it comes time, if it wasn't good enough, you can hang your glove up, you can hang your cleats up, you can hang your spikes up, knowing that you did everything possible to achieve individual or team goals. And he said you can live with that. He said the last thing you want to do is to have some regrets that you could have done more. So again, the expression my brother always used, and I steal it and use it often to my team, to youth athletes and everything else, is don't be afraid to empty the tank.
I love it. Decided dominate. Don't be scared to empty the tank.
Yes,
All right.
sir. Love it.
You got anything else?
Well,
We could go for 5 more hours, but we're running out of time. So.
Do we have a minute?
Yeah, do one more. Whatever.
I have nowhere to go. I'm all yours, fellas.
So Scott, I am curious. What does it feel like to be a former coach of individuals that you've coached and now have moved on, played a little baseball, but also they are now executives within the Major League Baseball. So you had the opportunity to. I just got to hear what your thoughts are in terms of going to the World Series, this past World Series, and both teams having a general manager that actually played for you. Yeah. What was that like? 'Cause we heard that you were at Game 1.
You know what, DJ? I'm so proud of all my guys. And again, sometimes you question your path in life. I had plenty of opportunities to go back to the major leagues as a coach. Plenty of opportunities to leave Princeton, to go to some bigger schools. In the end, I stayed here, and I've been here for a while now. And I'm so proud of all my guys. You see how they develop into their lives. It's been really fun to watch some of the players from my first few years move into fatherhood, and to come back with their own kids, to see. It's really kind of cool to watch them to come back. You knew them as 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Now they're coming back as parents.
Right.
Of course, you're so excited about what they all do from when they leave here, whether they go into Wall Street, whether they go into the medical world, entrepreneurship, whatever it might be. We have so many interesting stories with what our Princeton guys come. Again, Princeton changed lives. And so many of these guys, what they had was because of their Princeton opportunity. But as a baseball guy myself, when I've been able to help some of these guys get into the baseball world as players, as executives, as analytics, directors, so proud of them. But it all came true in this World Series. Right now we have 3 of our former players that are Major League general managers. So we have Chris Young with the Rangers, we have Mike Hazen with the Diamondbacks, and we have Mike Chernoff with the Cleveland Indians. So to think about my little world here at Princeton, that 3 Major League general managers played for me. So, watching, with interest as the playoffs moved on, seeing that there was going to be a chance that the Rangers were going to be able to play against the Diamondbacks. Chris Young was my first ever recruit here at Princeton. You're talking about a special individual. Mike Hazen was my first captain. Mike was here on the team when I arrived. His leadership skills are unparalleled. There were times where I would go to we wanted culture. We wanted to create an environment where I would go say something to a player, and Mike Hazen would literally stop me and go, "I got it, coach. This is my job." because he was
Wow.
captain of our team.
Love that.
You know, helped Mike get an opportunity, hooked him up with Peter Gammons, hooked him up with Mark Shapiro, who was with the Indians at the time. Mark hired, Mike to get into the front office work. Mark called me up 2 months later saying this kid's a superstar. He's going to be a big time player in Major League Baseball for years to come. Chris Young, 10-year Major League career, all-star pitcher, won a World Series title, worked for the commissioner's office when he was done playing. I think anybody that knew Chris knew that he was going to be in this role at some point. But to take over, I'm so proud of these guys. They're both about culture. They're both about people. With as smart as they both are, book smart, everything else, they're people smart. They know people. They know what makes people tick. They know how to motivate people, and they know how to build a culture. So as we got into the World Series, into the playoffs this year, the Rangers were in it. Watched the Diamondbacks come back with the great comeback against the Phillies. The day after the World Series was set, when the Diamondbacks had beat the Phillies, I'm in the middle of my workout, as I always am, early in the morning. And around 6 o'clock, I check my phone every so often in case people need. About 6 o'clock that next morning, I had a joint text from Mike Hazen and Chris Young, basically saying, Coach, we're here because of you. Probably get a little emotional here. We're here because of you. We could have done it without you. We have tickets. We have hotel. We have everything you need for a portion or the entire World Series. Wow. But it would mean a lot to us if you're here. So got hold of those guys and said, look, there's a lot going on. It means a lot to me. I will see you guys. I'll come out for the first 2 games in Dallas. I'll see you guys for games 1 and 2. And then I'm going to get out of your hair and I'm going to let you guys take care of the things you need to do. You don't need to worry about me after this. Yeah. So I went out to games 1 and 2. They made it such a special event for me to have those guys there. The number of articles, the number of interviews talking about Princeton and the impact, the way those guys cherished their time at Princeton and realized what Princeton, not just Princeton baseball, but what Princeton did for them, and the way they articulate it. So many of us here at Princeton, athletic department, up on campus, Nassau Hall, all just feel like it was just one of the most incredible marketing tools that Princeton has had in a long time, just to show how special this place really is.
Yeah,
what a special moment.
Incredible.
What a way to end the show. We should have led with this.
Yeah, I'm sitting, but that's worthy of a standing note.
Yeah, right, that's fantastic.
Amazing. Love it. Thank you for sharing that, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, very much.
No, well, DJ, one last thing. I love the fact that you're wearing the Princeton stuff that you have around.
Yes, sir.
But at some point, we're going to have to see your transcript and your test scores to see whether you're able to wear that stuff publicly.
Hey, look, we didn't get into it, but I thought to. I know I told you this when we were there. I did a visit to Princeton. Ended up going to little old Wesley, and you came in right after. I was 96.7 and you were 97, obviously. But my mom actually just brought that up the other day. She's like, you could have went to Princeton, and I'm like, I know, Mom, I know.
It's a magical place. I'm glad that this is where my coaching career has been. And again, it's been so great, DJ, to connect with you over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yes, sir.
We had a blast sort of getting to know each other, playing each other. Growing up, believe it or not, in my part of New Jersey, huge Penn State football fan. Mm-hmm. Was all about the Nittany Lions. So followed your career, and then being able to really get to know you as a teammate and now know you as a friend over the last few years. Again, that's been a blessing as well.
No, I really appreciate that, and the fact that you are Tar Heel.
Oh yeah, come on now, we both are Tar Heels. So we had TJ Graham on the show a couple weeks ago. He's an NC State guy. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth with that. I'll tell you.
He actually wore some Tar Heel colors.
That's it.
Well, what's nice this year is over the course of my career at Princeton, we've been able to play UNC a few times, but always midweek games. We actually finally convinced them we're going down for a 3-game series. Okay. March 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, so I can actually throw my top pitchers against them. I'm hoping to pull some connections. I got the chance to know Coach Williams a little bit over the years. Hoping that Coach Williams is in town because I'd love him to come on out and speak to my guys. That's for sure.
That'd be cool.
Well,
That'd be
Scott,
really
listen, really appreciate you. Appreciate your words. Love you the same. I mean, what you've accomplished there at Princeton is incredible. I mean, obviously we see the fruit of what you've done, but you know, us getting a chance. I mean, myself, of course, but now even with Mike, getting a chance to know you intimately has been incredible. Can't wait. You know, when we spend time together, it's always something incredible. You know, I mean, the wisdom that you provide is, you know, second to none. I really appreciate your time and effort here, and then the time that we're going to spend together beyond today.
Yeah.
My pleasure. And you guys know I'm always here for you.
All right. Yes, sir. Well, thank you for being on the side to dominate, and we will catch you soon. Good
You
luck
guys
this
take
upcoming
care.
season.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
See you guys.
Cheers. Bye.